I've never exploited anyone that didn't want to be exploited. Bloody hell. Everybody's got a million reasons to blow your brains out with Ricky Warden, that's me, and Dave Jarvis.
Hey, that's me.
Ariel on the panel with us again tonight, and our special guest interview, Dan Franklin. Everybody join us in the chats. Let's participate and have a good time this evening. Everyone, the one, the only, the powerful, your host, Dave Jarvis.
Yes. How is everybody doing this lovely evening? I will start from the top. Ricky, how is your evening going, sir?
Oh, fan-freaking-tastic, man. Look at me roll. Hey.
I do. Looking sexy as ever. Very good.
I'm just excited for this show tonight. Really, it's great to have Dan Franklin with us, Dave Jarvis. Thank you for everything you do to blow your brains out here with us.
Well, thank you to Mr. Franklin. Dan, my man, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good, thank you very much. I wouldn't say it's the evening here. It's currently 3 a.m. In the corner of England where I reside. But I'm very happy to be up and about and joining you guys today.
Well, the pleasure is all ours, sir. Thank you very much for taking the time. I know you're a busy man. Finally, Ariel, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty great. I'm here with you boys.
Thank you, Ariel.
Good. So I'll promise to play nice. Now, tonight is a very special evening for me because I have been raving for, I'd say, probably a month and a half about this book that, honestly, I wasn't looking for it. I was looking for another book that I remember reading like 15 years ago. And I was like, that was a pretty cool book. I still don't remember what that book was, but I thought that this particular book was that book. The name of the book is Heavy: The Way Metal Changes the Way We See the World. I was like, this has got to be it. That's a great title. That's, I remember the documentary series, so I bought it. And it was not the book I was looking for, but it was far and away galaxies better than the book I was looking for. And the man that wrote it here, Mr. Dan Franklin, thank you very much. We'll be kissing your ass for the better part of the next 2 hours.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So the book came out in 2020, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, March 2020.
Okay. How long had you been working on it?
I originally, so the way that nonfiction is usually sold to publishers is on proposal, and I think I wrote the proposal for Heavy in early 2018, and sort of started it in earnest sort of early summer 2018, and kind of finished it in the spring of 2019, I think, if I remember rightly. Maybe a bit later than that, actually. Maybe it was the summer. And then it came out in March 2020, which obviously was quite a sort of weird, fateful time for the book to come out, because the book came out on the Thursday before we had our first big lockdown over here in the UK. So it was an odd time to publish a book when you couldn't go into any bookshops.
But it's okay because it's been gaining, it's been spreading like wildfire, and I've been doing my best to try to fan the flames over here in North Texas.
Yeah, but I appreciate that, and I just love the fact that it's finding readers, and especially that it's finding readers in your corner of the world as well. I mean, obviously, American metal music is a huge part of my growing up. Is still such a kind of massive part of what constitutes the scene, and Texan metal music is long time been a very important part of the metal scene as well. So maybe we can talk a bit about that as well. It'd be interesting to hear your reflections on that.
Mr. Franklin, you just dinged the right bell, but we will get there in a natural progression. First things first. Right, exactly. So you've been working with the Quietus publication for some years. Did they just straight up say, "Hey, you need to write this book," or were you like, did you have to ask permission to like go off and do your thing?
No. But I mean, I'm an independent operator, really, and I've written for them on and off. So, man, since about 2010, probably. The book. It was funny. The book came out of a piece of writing I just ended up doing spontaneously about Tool, which ended up being the chapter about Tool in the book. And I was listening to a lot of Tool. And I couldn't really tell you why. I just happened to be listening to a lot of their bootleg recordings on YouTube and sort of getting more into that band again. They've always been a huge band for me. And I was reading these Aldous Huxley books at the same time, and they began talking to each other in a weird way. And I sort of started to write that chapter, what became that chapter in that moment. So the book sort of just emerged for me at the start of 2018. I'd always thought it'd be interesting to write to write at more length about metal, but I didn't quite know what my angle was going to be. But the book actually came out of starting to do that piece of writing first, and and then that idea of writing a book that really explicitly looked at metal's position amongst lots of other types of cultural ephemera and things really emerged from that. Can you look at it through the prism of films and books, and because it's such a rich genre of music, and so I was away at the races then. But the Quietists have always been very supportive, and they put on a launch for the book back in 2020, and I'm still writing for them occasionally now. They're a very vital resource for music writing over here and in Europe and globally, I think, as well. So yeah, they've always been very supportive of me.
Yeah, I love the way that each chapter unfolds. They're almost written to mimic the mood of the bands that you're speaking on. Like the first chapter, when you start from the beginning with Zeppelin and Sabbath and Judas Priest and Dio, it's written almost like Tolkien, like they're given like mythological status. And then in the chapter about speed and thrash metal, how the threat of nuclear holocaust basically loomed over that whole scene, which definitely fueled the fire. Or in the chapter about black metal, it's almost got like an operatic feel. Was that a conscious decision, or did that just come about with the progression?
So that's very cool to hear you say. I really, that's very gratifying for me to hear that. It wasn't intentional in the sense of I sort of sat there and thought, right, this chapter has to be in this voice, but I do, the way I write is very different to the way I talk and the way I am sort of interpersonally. When I write about metal, I kind of hit another register because I think it deserves a little bit of fire and brimstone and a little bit more of a kind of yeah,
some screaming and some growling and
yeah. So I think that's cool that you sort of saw that in the narrative voice, that it shifted according to be appropriate to the bands I was discussing.
Very cool.
And no one's ever made that comment. I mean, on the new book I've written, which let's not get into that right now.
Oh, we'll get into that later.
But it was a bit of feedback I had about that, was that it read like a true crime book, and I think again that just reflects the fact that book is it's appropriate to the subject matter. It's come out of that subject matter. So writing's funny. You can be led subconsciously in sort of very strange ways. So I think what you're sensing is my response to that. I'm responding to that music, and that's the way I want the book to feel really committed to metal music and to be kind of enthralled to it and, you know, totally in the zone. So I think that's where that is coming from. Certainly with the first chapter on that idea of looking at those myths and trying not to kind of, a lot of those stories in that first chapter are very familiar, you know, Tony Iommi cutting off his fingertips and so on. So it's more like,
oh my gosh,
yeah, it's more like just going through, introducing those, revisiting those myths and letting them establish a lot of the themes that are carried through the book. I actually thought that the Judas Priest and Dio sections were stronger in that because they felt a bit fresher to me, putting Dio together with Excalibur and that kind of mode, that very gleaming 80s retro Arthurian thing, which he was doing. And then I did an interview with KK Downing on the Judas Priest bit, which I think actually really grounded their music more in what it felt like to grow up in quite serious poverty in a working class environment in Birmingham, in the post-war Birmingham, rather than just sort of use the cliche of Birmingham was full of industrial, you know, factories and so on, which is why metal sounds like that, like it does. It actually comes from the struggles and a lot of the trauma of the kids of the men who were working in those places, especially post-war. And that comes up again in the grunge section later in the book. Like Alice in Chains, I think a lot of that grunge generation were responding to their parents in the Vietnam, coming out of Vietnam, and a lot of the trauma around that. So, you know, so yeah, I really enjoyed writing those two sections in particular. I remember writing the Judas Priest section. Sometimes when you write, you can just have it can be hard graft and hard work, and you're like slugging through it to get something down. But the Judas Priest section just flowing. It was beautiful. I remember at the end of that morning, I was like, yeah, that was great, and I didn't expect it to be.
Well, Ricky is a huge Judas Priest fan.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Ricky?
Priest. Yeah, definitely. Priest is my very favorite band.
Great.
Yeah, I know pretty much every song, all the records.
Yeah.
I saw Judas Priest on the Point of Entry tour all the way up through probably Painkiller.
Wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was having a conversation about Priest with Eric Roper, the cover artist, the other day for a piece I was writing at the Quietus, and we were looking at Defenders of the Faith, the cover. We were just talking about that cover artwork. They did so much to move the aesthetic of metal on and develop it, what it could be, the possibilities of it. Even early on, you know, all the sort of cliched associations with metal around skulls and Satanism, but they were operating in this completely different place really early on. You look at the covers to Turbo, Screaming for Vengeance, Defenders of the Faith, bright.
They brought out a huge stage show for that Defenders of the Faith tour also.
Yeah.
Really, that Defenders of the Faith tour was almost a climax, you know, because Screaming for Vengeance was such a killer record. And so was Defenders with Free Will Burning and some Heads Are Gonna Roll. But yeah, that was an amazing tour. Both of those tours, Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith.
Yeah, very important band.
And I was surprised that you would lump, you know, I mean, I kind of can see Zeppelin, Sabbath, Priest, Dio. That was an interesting choice for that Mount Rushmore. What drew you to Dio?
I think Dio just, you know, he traversed a lot of very key bands of that era, and I think he defined, I think, the template for a lot of certain kind of singing and subject matter within metal music, which became very, very iconic within the genre. Like I say, that, you know, you mentioned Tolkien-esque. he's not necessarily into Tolkien, but it's that kind of more fantastical element which metal is always very close to, like that sense of a world that we all know that is slightly beyond our understanding, that could have been in a dream, or and you see reflected in art and movies and books in that fantasy genre. So I always felt he represented that, and had that lyrical bent to what he was doing, which put things in a fantastical realm, as opposed to, you know, what I think Black Sabbath were doing was very much navigating their reality and their day-to-day reality through a filter. So I felt I felt he deserved to be there, and it just kind of helped because he linked together. He was a stepping stone away from Black Sabbath as well to what metal became in the 80s as well. He's kind of stepped off that ramp into there, and obviously re-emerged with Sabbath later on.
Heaven and Hell was huge. That record was fucking huge.
Yeah, and Mr. Franklin here believes that Iommi's work was better there than with Sabbath. Isn't that correct?
No. I'm referring to the record Heaven and Hell. Heaven and Hell, the record was huge. When the world really first discovered Ronnie James Dio, I think when he joined Sabbath, I knew who Rainbow was and had probably heard Long Live Rock and Roll, but you know, come on, Dio was Black Sabbath for a couple of records, and they were amazing records, and it was an amazing time, and you know, that's who Dio was to the metalheads. And then he discovered Vivian Campbell and put out his first two records, and those first two records still today, you know, were at the top of every, you know, guitar kind of lover driven heavy metal maniac.
Well, there's another rabbit hole I got to go down. Dan, you have sent me down so many rabbit holes because of this book. If nothing else, viewers at home, you need to read this book, because there are so many bands in here that I've never heard of, but Mr. Franklin speaks in such glowing terms of them. For example, I never knew who Bloodbath or Carcass were, but then I went a deep dive on them, and I was like, oh my God, this music is awesome.
Well, I saw Carcass live beginning of last week. Carcass are one of the most important British metal bands. In terms of what they did to progress what extreme metal is now regarded to be. You know, they emerged in the late 80s, concurrently with, well, just after Napalm Death, because Bill Steer, who was in Carcass, was originally in Napalm Death. And Napalm Death created, well, they may not have created it, but they were one of the forerunners in grindcore and just totally extreme noise in the metal space. There's obviously industrial music as well, which is another kind of thing. And Carcass started as a grindcore based death metal band, and then evolved into the melodic death metal band par excellence, alongside a lot of the stuff that was coming out of Sweden and the Gothenburg sound. And they're just totally unique for me in what they do. Their commitment to the politics and what they're saying about society and humanity, veganism, and all of that stuff was really early. But their songwriting is just phenomenal. And Heartwork, 1993's Heartwork, for me is a top 10 album, you know, any day of the week. And I saw them last week. They just did a UK tour. I think it was their first one in about 25 plus years. And you know, they were playing these really small venues, about 300 people. They had Unto Others supporting them, and a British band called Conjurer, who are excellent as well, who I also write about in the book. and yeah, I mean they're getting on now. I mean they're probably touching 60 or thereabouts. But
Hey,
Bill Steer as
good
well.
music knows no age.
Bill Steer on the left there. He wears, you know, flares and denim jackets and looks like he stepped out of Leonard Skinner. And he brings this sort of flair literally to his guitar playing and a groove, which really sets him apart, I think, in terms of death metal guitar players. And Jeff Walker, the singer there with the white shirt on, is very sardonic, kind of classic British, very dry sense of humor, very engaging. And yeah, so they came out of the Earache record stable, which is based in Nottingham in England. So they're a quintessential British band, but also just one of the great, you know, innovators within the metal genre.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, conversely, Bloodbath started off as a bit of a joke originally, a sort of supergroup death metal band that really was playing on the genre tropes and just having a lot of fun with it, a party band.
I love that so much. That's one of the charming things about that, man.
But just by dint of being so good, they ended up kind of evolving into being quite a serious player themselves. So I'm just a big fan of their work, and it was they're a good conduit to explore blasphemy and a lot of the stuff that goes into death metal. But if you're talking about death metal purely as a genre, which is about the destruction of the human body and what all that kind of means as a piece of flesh, Carcass of the band.
Yeah, I would have to say I veered more towards Bloodbath. They were more my tempo, but what I really love about Carcass is like each album sounds different, and each album is a progression from the last one. So it's almost like, besides the vocalist, it sounds like a different band. And I really appreciate any group that's willing to take those risks and still come out with a good product.
Yeah. I mean, their first album, Reek of Putrefaction, is quite difficult to listen to. You know, it's really like lo-fi, difficult production. Yeah. And then you get to Hard Work, which is like this sort of burnished melodic death metal masterpiece. And then their comeback albums, Surgical Still, and the last one, which names just escape me, are, yeah, they're brilliant. Sort of a combination of all the different sounds that have come through. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Carcass and a big fan of Bloodbath as well. And Bloodbath actually because they've switched vocalists a few times, their sounds evolved quite a bit too.
Oh yeah, if ever somebody doesn't know about death metal and they want to hear a song, I give them Eaton. That's just that is the funniest, most brutal death metal song you've ever heard in your life. You know, you can't start them off with Hammer Smash Face. You gotta slowly ease them into it. And what better way than humor?
Yeah. Well, Hammer Smash Face is quite funny as well in its own way.
Oh yeah,
I mean that was the first death metal song that I ever came across because of Ace Ventura.
Ace Ventura, God, we saw that the other day. It's such a great scene.
Yeah.
Excuse me, it's Franken. Thank you.
Yeah,
and then
the whole film is great, but it's even better when you get to know who Cannibal Corpse are and the whole fact that they were up for doing that.
Yeah. Later on in the book, you dedicated a lot of time to Mastodon and Gojira, two bands that I really kind of ignored because all the people I didn't like were listening to them. But now that I've gone back, now that I'm older and wiser and hairier, I decided to give them another listen, especially with the way you talked about Mastodon's concept album of Moby Dick. And so listening to that album with that in mind, I was like, wow, this is fantastic, actually. And ironically enough, they're on tour right now.
Yeah. On tour together over there.
Yeah. That's so cool. I was like, what? Did they read his book?
Yeah, well, I didn't actually. With Gojira, I could have done a bit more on Gojira. They've got a little bit more of a sort of passing reference in there. I think Gojira are one of the next big. I think they should be headlining the Download Festival over here soon. I saw Mastodon on that Leviathan tour in 2005. That was the first time I saw them. Their growth has been really interesting. I get very jealous of US tours because obviously they put together these incredible package tours in order to cover the country over there. So the bills are always superior than you get over here in the UK and mainland Europe. So yeah, I was envious when I saw they were touring together. But yeah, Mastodon, and actually their last album was a real revelation as well, came out in the middle of the pandemic too. And it's excellent and a real step forward for them. But yeah, I saw Gojira earlier this year. You know, another band that's worked hard and is actually really reaping the rewards now. I mean, they've probably released 7 or 8 albums. And here you see this image here. They're being supported by Conjurer again, who I just mentioned toured with Carcass, and Earn, who I haven't written about in the book, are another excellent up-and-coming UK band who have a new album coming out this year, which I think is going to put them in a different place as well. But Gojira for me encapsulate everything that's good about modern metal music. They're just they have a message. They have an incredibly tight, well-defined sound, which is their own. They're French, which is great. You know, just having a great kind of world-class French metal band is awesome.
Hypnotic. There's something very hypnotic about the way that they operate. You know, they can take a riff and drive it into the ground, but it doesn't feel, strenuous. You know, you kind of get swept up into the rhythm of it, and before you realize it, 5 minutes has gone by, and you're like, wait, this is the same riff, but I'm not tired of it.
You mean that riff that you just heard?
Yeah, that would be the one. Yeah,
that was the first riff.
Yeah, it's a good riff.
Yeah, they do. You know, rhythmically they're very strong. They also have lots of little tricks that they use, that like little frills in their sound, which actually you hear them and you're like, oh, it's a Gojira thing, like the guitar scrapes and the kind of way that they have these little things that they do, which really mark it out as their own thing. Yeah, they're great.
Well, that much sounded good. I didn't want to play more of it though, and interrupt the interview or anything.
Oh, no, you're good, bud. But yeah, Dan, you brought up something that I totally spaced out on. You were actually scheduled for last week, but you had to go to the Download Festival. How was it?
It was great. Yeah. So I didn't want to do this last week because I was going to be driving up. I drove up on Thursday and I was coming back on the Thursday night as well, and then going back up again on the Sunday. So Download was really interesting this year. So there's been a festival at Donington, Castle Donington in Leicestershire in England, which is basically the middle of the country. And they've had the Monsters of Rock Festival started there in 1980, and had Rainbow, I think, first headlined it. And I went to the last Monsters of Rock in 1996 when I was 14, when Kiss reformed and they played, and then Ozzy Osbourne was under them. But then at the same time, they had all the kind of new, and I don't mean new metal bands, I mean the kind of new breed of metal was playing, like Fear Factory and Biohazard and Typo Negative. And then Korn played on the second stage. And basically that was the sort of watershed moment, I think, for metal music, was them appearing at that festival. And when we were there, I wasn't familiar with them. I became a big fan of theirs as a teenager, but they announced them from the main stage and say Korn are just about to start on the second stage, and half the guys in the pit just started running up the hill to go and see them, which I've never seen in a festival since. So after Monsters of Rock finished, there was this sort of period of no festivals on the site in Donington. And then download started in 2003. So this year was the 20th anniversary, and they usually do it over three days, and they extended it to 4. So Metallica played the Thursday and the Saturday, doing their 2-night no repeat thing, which they're doing at the moment. And then they had Bring Me the Horizon, who are a British band that started as a death band, and then have evolved into something else, kind of a bit sleeker, a bit more popular, pop oriented.
Listen to the sound of sadness in your voice when you say that. Are you? Did they let you down somewhere along the way, Dan?
Oh no. I mean, I think it's really great how they've evolved. They're not really my they're not particularly my thing, but I do appreciate them. And then Slipknot played on Sunday, who are whose evolution as a band has really happened with the festival. But so that's about 100,000 people you get download, and it feels like it could go bigger. And it felt like it was sold out plus this year. But it's interesting because there's this big festival tradition in Europe and the UK, which isn't such the case in America, isn't it? But there are more festivals now, I think, than there were. Like Welcome to Rockville, and there's obviously always been Lollapalooza, and Coachella is quite long established. But there's such an interesting kind of metal festival culture in Europe.
Rocklahoma's a really good one. I'm really glad it's taken off like it has.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that that it is. I always was a bit curious why it wasn't so. Why it was more of a European thing, that all the American bands would come over and basically just tour the European.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. You want me to ask you in return, what are the police like there at these European shows? That's what I've always wondered. Because here we have to enjoy the show without moshing, it's ridiculous, really.
They confiscate everything on your person when you walk in, so that you have to buy $10 waters and $15 burgers.
Yeah, they've sterilized it and just made it a different process. When I grew up, those Judas Priest concerts I was telling you about, I'm not saying that this was the best plan for music moving forward, but the way we experienced it was when the lights dimmed, everyone from the upper balcony, lower balcony, all made their way down to the floor and packed against the front of the stage. You hear people today talking about complaining because there's so many people packed at an audience. Man, it was just common back then. If you're going to jam up at the front of the stage with Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, these kind of bands, you were going to be packed in like tuna. And you had to hold your hands up so that you could breathe and catch a breath and help, sing the next notes with your favorite band. That's just the way it was. And that to me was part of the excitement. Even back then, I had friends though that were like, "Man, that's fucking kind of crazy that that you're up there at every show." So that's the thing is outdoor concerts aren't as fun here anymore, and I believe that's one of the reasons why Rocklahoma is having the success that they're having, because it's pretty wild ass out there.
That's cool. That's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, even Donington. Originally, when the original incarnation of that festival had a reputation for quite a lot of wild behavior. I mean, obviously, a lot of the crowd management stuff wasn't in place like it is now. So
well, Dan, let me clarify, man. None of us have ever liked an asshole, someone that runs a show for everybody. I'm not talking about people like that existing. I'm talking about just being able to enjoy the show, without worrying about the cops, So what are the police like at these big festivals in Europe?
They're not visible, which is why it works, I think.
I think it's got something to do with
it. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been trying to corral us for years over here, bro.
Yeah. No, there's definitely I think there's an understanding with the audience that there's going to be certain stuff going on, and as long as it is safe to a degree. I think they tolerate it. So I think that helps. I mean, at Download this year though, it was particularly busy. I think because it was the anniversary year, so I could just see that festival growing. But it used to be the case that you had to watch yourself because people would throw like bottles of piss around in the arena and all of that stuff. There was a big tradition for that. So it's kind
that's
of
not cool. I wouldn't like getting pummeled with that, and I'm sure beautiful Ariel would not either.
no.
It's cool that you picked Donington '96 as the watershed moment for your neck of the woods, because over here we had Ozfest '96, which was
nice.
the inaugural, and we had our own watershed. Spear Factory and Powerman 5000 played it alongside Sepultura, who had just done Roots, and so they were shifting. And then, but you also had Slayer co-headlining. So it was a cool like mishmash, but yeah, there definitely wasn't a frenzy for like Cold Chamber like there would be over in Europe for a band like Korn.
Yeah, there was a really good CD actually of that Ozfest '96. I remember rinsing quite hard. They released each band had a song on that. But Ozfest is important too, isn't it? Because as soon as Donington, the first incarnation of Donington stopped, Ozfest was taking off in America, and then they brought it over here in 1998. Milwaukee's Bowl, when the original Black Sabbath got back together for that, and that bill was stacked. I mean, that was Slayer, Soulfly. It was going to be Korn, and then Pantera, but it was going to be, that was like the run. I think Fear Factory started the day. So it was this incredible 5-band run. And then Korn dropped off the bill because one of them was having a baby or something. And then Foo Fighters stepped in. But Foo Fighters off their second album.
The Foo Fighters played in the middle of all that. That is the proverbial dick on a fish right there.
I mean, they did great actually. They knew
nobody said they didn't.
they had to harden up their sound quite a lot, but that was Ozfest '98 was the only time I saw Pantera live. I bought tickets to see them in 2000 on Reinventing the Steel, but I couldn't go in the end. So yeah, that was a big gig. And then
hey, at least you got to see them, man. A lot of folks these days love metal, love Pantera. Never got to see them live.
Oh, well, you can see them now.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that. So anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah,
I was just showing off because I saw Pantera a couple of times. That's a little Dimebag Daryl right there. About 17, I'm 18, and fill in Selmo there.
Well, hey, go, but put that back up.
Sure.
Oh man,
this is James Hetfield right here.
Holy
and this
shit.
is me jamming with James in Dime's garage, little outdoor studio.
Wow. So what year was that? That looks like 1986, 7.
Yeah, you're very close. It'd have to be a little sooner. Let's see. Yeah, it's before that. This is more like, I'm going totally off of memory, so everybody's gonna have to forgive me. This is it's way prior to power metal. This is more like I Am the Night. And so yeah, it's like 84, 80, 83 even. Yeah, it's right in there.
Very cool.
Very
and this other photo here with James Hetfield, this is 83. So this is
83.
Oh yeah, dude. This is right after the Ride the Lightning tour. The Ride the Lightning tour just ended. And
that would have been 84, 85. Sorry, I just kind of threw myself in there.
Right. This is Josh Ing, everybody joining the party here. You bring up Josh. Metallica, and he joined the party.
Actually, Ariel asked me to come on. So,
all right. Welcome to the party.
And you're always welcome. Well, everybody, thank you for taking a minute to examine where I'm at here. And Dan, thank you for bringing up Pantera. I'm always thrilled to death every time I hear every Pantera story.
Yeah, I want to get into Pantera here in a bit, but I just want to get through this other stuff. I feel like the Pantera stuff is going to take up a bulk of the time, so I just want to knock out this other stuff first. All right.
Sure.
All right. My apologies. So
love you, Dave Jarvis.
I love you too, brother. In this book, heavy is used as more than just like a timbre of sound, but as like an all-encompassing, almost like energy field. Dan, why do you think heavy matters?
Well, I mean, this is still something that my thoughts are evolving about. So I think heaviness ultimately, for me, comes down to there's the rawness of the energy within the music, which is quite hard to pin down and define. You know, that it's almost as if heaviness is a kind of something that is tapping through into our reality, in which metal bands are kind of taking advantage of. You know, it's like a force. And you know, when Iommi wrote the riff to Black Sabbath, he speaks about it being as if something or someone was playing through him. So I think there's always in life, in the human experience, we're grappling with things that are beyond our understanding and beyond the way that we can process through our senses and the way that our brains work. And I think heaviness sort of manifests as something which is incredibly powerful, which kind of takes this form that if you tune into it and you vibe off it, it's with you for life, really. So there's that thing as well. So it's that kind of a sense of this unknowable energy source.
Once a heavy, always a heavy.
Right. The lifer thing. You know, the Slayer fan, you know, once you become a Slayer fan, do you ever stop being a Slayer fan? There's that kind of classic formulation.
Rock and roll, metal.
Yeah. So,
you know, like Black Sabbath, same thing. Pantera, all of them.
Yeah. But I also think it's about, I think there's something around heavy music. So you can have metal music which isn't particularly heavy, which doesn't do this, or even pop music that does do this because it's heavy going. You know, I think there's something about it which is about acknowledging the darkness in ourselves and in society around us, and having a very honest appraisal of it and looking it straight in the eye and saying, I see you, and I'm going to own that part of myself or that part of the world that I'm in, and acknowledge it as being important and operating within it. Because in doing so, you're not fearful. You know, you're embracing what a lot of other people might run away from. And that is what the heavy experience is. And I think that's also why there's always such a crossover between people who like heavy music and like other forms of extreme culture, be it horror movies, true crime, anything that looks at the human experience and just digs that little bit deeper into what on the surface level might be, oh, that's unwholesome and I don't really want to get involved with that. Anything that's transgressive and pushes boundaries, I think that sits at the center of what heaviness can and should be. And I think that's what I respond to it in it as well, is that I find that good heavy music is articulating something which I might find difficult to articulate myself just directly, but it expresses something for me. So, but there's people who read the book, and there's people who go to concerts who, if I said that to them, would be like, I don't know, man, I just like the music, you know. And I think that's legit. And there's lots of metal bands out there that aren't heavy, as I was saying. And I think there's an interesting, the evolution of the pop sound within popular sounds within metal, or pop that uses guitars is an interesting counter. I think it helps define what heaviness is by what it's not. And that's where that's quite useful. So I mean, I'll always caveat this by saying this is something that's evolving for me, but I think that's where I'm at in terms of my personal understanding of what heaviness represents and why it feels so profound and why it feels so long lasting.
Do you think metal fans should be feared by the common public?
No, I think the opposite. I think metal fans should be, and I think they should be embraced on the grounds that they are, in a very healthy way, engaging with dark subject matter. I think, you know, the atmosphere at a metal gig, you know, I've seen Oasis, you know, the British indie band. Atmosphere
Oasis is my favorite band of all time, by the way.
Is it really?
I'm not even joking. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Oasis, there was always a more uptight, difficult atmosphere at Oasis gigs than any metal show I've ever been at. And I'm not putting Oasis down about that, but I think that it just says something about the community within metal, and also that very healthy embrace of the dark side, which I think makes metalers particularly worthy of not being feared but being embraced. That's a cliche. I mean, there are pockets of metal which are genuinely dangerous, and I think that's important too. That has its place too.
All types are everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
I just think that it was funny that Oasis fans over there are more aggro than the metal fans, because over here I saw Oasis a couple times, and you know, they were fans, but at the end of the night they were like, "Oh, that was fun. Let's go home." No, nobody was trying to start any shit.
It's so funny because in over here the story is that Oasis just never dented America. That it never worked. You know, that was always the sort of story of Oasis, was they were massive, but they never cracked America. So it's very cool to hear that you went to see them.
Oh, dude, yeah, they got me through my parents' divorce, and they got me through high school. You know, because even though they weren't heavy, like Liam had the most not give a fuck attitude, and when you're a nervous little kid going through puberty, that are those superhumans are the ones you look up to.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. That's so great to hear that, you know, it feels unlikely, but you know what, I think what you're talking, it's exactly what culturally you might think, oh, it's a Texan kid listening to Oasis, that's really strange, but it's not, because it's the equivalent of me listening to Life of Agony, or, you know, anything from one of the tough guy bands from Brooklyn, or, you know, or a Texan band. In fact, actually having something which is culturally quite far removed from you can make that easier to associate, like you say, like a sort of superhuman, sort of larger than life, away from your life conduit for. But Liam Gallagher's very cool guy, and he's mellowed a lot in as he's got older. And funnily enough, one of my old friends, his older brother, knows the band very well. So when I went to see them, the only time I went to see them, it was at Wembley Stadium in 2000. I think it was 2008, 2007. So we got tickets through him. And that was with Oasis, and it was Kasabian, and, you know, that was kind of their peak. I'll be interested to see if they ever managed to kind of bury the hatchet and play together again.
Well, even if they don't, I'm still I'm a moderate fan of Noel's High Flying Birds and Liam's solo stuff, and you know, BDI it's got, you know, 3 or 4 songs, but yeah, Oasis from top to bottom, except for whatever that was that came out after Heathen Chemistry, that one album, didn't really care for it, but everything else I'll listen to front to back, because it's still just great music that makes you empowered and makes you think, I can do some shit that I was afraid of. And that's, you know, I think the metal for others empowers them in the same way.
Yeah.
And I honestly
Certainly
think
Black
that,
Sabbath and Judas Priest did back in the day. AC/DC, all those bands. Aerosmith was even empowering. It was all that
and
way.
for all my friends, you know, I was the Liam Gallagher fan, but all my friends, they were like, Phil Anselmo is the Ubermensch. Phil Anselmo is the Superman. And we have come full swing because Dan, you do an entire chapter on Phil Anselmo. And
Wow.
all of us here in Arlington, Texas, we have a special bond with Phil Anselmo. So I want to know, how do you and folks over there feel about Mr. Philip Anselmo?
Well,
He's all right.
That's Josh.
He's he's a fractured hero. You know, there's good and bad things that we can say about him. Let's
Yeah.
start with the good, and then we'll tear him down.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's interesting talking about it now because since the book's been written, the band Pantera is back together in a new formulation. And actually, after I wrote the book, I went to see him play with the Illegals at a very small venue in London.
Kick
when they
ass.
just, when they just started doing playing the Pantera songs again in a kind of more overt way. And that was an interesting gig for a few reasons. They had like a security barrier up at the venue. Never had a security barrier in the whole time I've been there, but they put one up.
Yeah, that's that high level Phil Anselmo security there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think, you know, like I say in the book.
Did you enjoy the experience, Dan? Did you enjoy the Illegals?
I did. Yeah, I did. I actually like those albums a lot. What he was, I think it's always been interesting how he'll push himself in different directions musically. And I loved the headfuckery of a lot of the music that was going into the illegal stuff. Even when they were playing, they were actively acknowledging how difficult and awkward the songs are, and sort of laughing at themselves and saying, this is another horrible song we're about to play you. And then, so they did, and they sort of did 8 songs and then kicked into the Pantera stuff. And then you had a load of, you know, guys in their 30s and 40s beating the shit out of each other in this tiny venue, which was fun. But as good as the Illegals are at the songs they've written or that are written for them, I mean, it's a different level watching the footage of Zakk Wylde and Charlie Benante going at those classic songs.
Oh, come on.
The caliber of what they do. Yeah. Particularly for me, Charlie Benante, I think is, and I said this to him when I interviewed him recently. I said, I think it's extraordinary what you're doing in terms of emulating that sound. And I like Zakk Wylde as well, but fundamentally he's just got a very different kind of untamed wildness to what he does. No pun intended. And he's working hard to behave himself to play.
I enjoy it, man. I like what he's doing. Yeah. I mean, I have not seen the band live, but I've watched a ton of videos, and you know, he's tearing it up.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's Charlie. Charlie is the one that's really, I mean, without him, I almost don't know where they would be.
Yeah. So you know, Anselmo for me, I think he's obviously he's a hugely important and influential figure in metal. And I think what he did as a vocalist and a lyricist in that period, in 95, 96, 97, for me was kind of extraordinary, you know. So the first Down album, Great Southern Tranquil, there was just this ferocity and emotional rawness to what he was doing, which put him in a kind of other league.
Sure.
And no one could touch him live back then. And loads of bands just try, and for years afterwards, loads of metal vocalists were basically just trying to rip off his shtick, the way he looked, the way he spoke to the crowd. I write in the book about the command that he had on the stage. Like I think metal is like metal is a genre where it's deliberately creates a bit of a division between the audience and the band sometimes, where it's like we're putting on a show for you, as opposed to say hardcore, where it's like we're all in this together as an experience. So as an orchestrator of an event, of an evening, yeah, Phil Anselmo was untouchable. And then it was also like the mythology that band built up around themselves, around the excesses and the home videos, and they made it look like it was a lot of fun to do what they did. In a lot of ways, inexplicably, a lot of bands I think struggle to do now. It's like, can you make it look like somewhere that you'd kill to be involved with? And they always did that.
Well, Dime was a very special character. You know, he's a very special person. So he got away with a lot of shit because he was always this, you know, christened guitar god around here. So it had a lot to do with, taking advantage of your opportunities and being the type of person that would do that. And that's Dime. So Dime kind of drug everybody along when it came to the home movies and everything.
And really, dude, Pantera were the pioneers of making the home video something to be cherished.
Well, Dime was.
Yeah, and what's crazy is like some home videos from other bands trying to be that cool ended up ruining them. I don't know if you saw Fear Factory's home video, but they are the most boring pieces of shit you will ever imagine, and actually made me less of a fan because I saw how boring they were. And that was a damn shame.
Yeah. Yeah, because, Fear Factory, Demanufactured, man, is an all-time classic for me. That was my sort of breakthrough album into metal when I heard that. So Anselmo, he was, I think, like I say, I think he's one of the greatest frontmen. I think in the book I say he's the greatest frontman metal's ever produced. I think that's my perspective. Generationally, we could argue about that if we want.
But, but it's a good conversation. Who did he take that from? Was it Rob Halford? Was it Ozzy? Was it Dio? Was it David Lee Roth?
It might have been Henry Rollins for all we know.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's an interesting blend, isn't he? I think of Halford and Henry Rollins, and the guy from Exorder, obviously, Carl Thomas, who's also brilliant. And that last Exorder, the Exorder album they just put out a few years ago when they got back together was fucking brilliant. But yeah, so with Anselmo, obviously a lot of that changed in 2016.
Yeah, it did. I knew it would be swift, but I figured that the Me Too folks and the people that are easily outraged would have known by now that he's been doing this for the better part of 15 years. So I don't know why any of them were surprised. I mean, we've seen him been doing that since 1987, but it was just crazy that the whole world finally caught up, and before even listening to the music, automatically just said, no, he's evil, and so is this band, and their music is of no merit. And it's like, but hold on, there are shades of gray in this whole thing, all right? I don't agree with what a drunk person does, but I've been around a lot of drunk people that have done some shit that they really regretted the next day, and so I'm always willing to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. Unfortunately, there was a camera on Phil on this one, and shit really snowballed, especially after that Rob Flynn video, which Dan, I am so glad you touched on what I thought of the first time I saw that video. And it was Rob Flynn is talking about Phil Anselmo is a bully and this, that, and the other. And dude, that is the cry of a man that wasn't allowed at the cool kid table. And you touched on that so brilliantly, and I really thank you for saying what I was thinking.
Well, you know, that came out of something that Anselmo said in that Eddie Trunk interview afterwards about him riding. The expression was riding the coattails, and I think Flynn was clearly hurt by the way he'd been treated by him in the past. It's weird as well because Flynn also has a history of inappropriate behavior in that regard as well. He's thrown words around and made gestures. And weirdly enough, when I went to see Machine Head in I don't know, it's 2014, their whole stage setup, they had the kind of eagle standard like Slayer did, and it was all red and black. And I thought, wow, the staging looks really like a kind of Nazi rally. But you know, the thing is, the metal genre has always exploited that imagery and will always fly close to the wind when it comes to that subject matter because it's very powerful, and it expresses a lot, I think, about uncovering what human nature is capable of, and it's always going to exploit the imagery in the same way that punk did. And it, you know, there's a violence and angularity to a lot of that stuff, which is why metal bands, I think, are quite keen to use it. But
and it's really fun to piss off the squares too. Really, that's what it all breaks down to. It's really fun. It's really fun to make other people uncomfortable with something you enjoy. I don't know what it is.
That's what most people will never understand about the rebel flag. You know, from Leonard Skinner to Pantera, I don't think they were agendaized by that flag. It was more, hey, let's stir some shit up and piss some people off. We're just gonna have a good time. Fuck everybody.
Yeah, you know, and the world's just changed.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's people at British festivals who would have a Confederate flag with them because I think a lot of people saw it as shorthand for the rebellion of the South and not about racism and slavery. The conversation around it has changed completely, where I think anyone flying a Confederate flag in a British festival, there'd be questions like, why are you doing that? You know, you're a bit more educated on the situation.
You would definitely have that here now today. So it's very interesting topic of conversation. And that's why I want to clarify. To us back then, Leonard Skinner fans, it was just a fuck you. That's all it was. It was a fuck you. Just like Dave Jarvis said, just, hey, let's piss some people off because we're pissed off. Fuck you. It was a nice little fuck you symbol. It had nothing to do with anything else.
And what's interesting about Anselmo is I think the comparison to someone like Morrissey, who obviously is a big hero of his, and has been on a similar journey. But I think Morrissey is much more overtly associates himself with hate groups than Anselmo ever had. And although Anselmo's made these kind of like fucking stupid gestures and you know, and come out with white supremacist rhetoric on stage and so on. But the main reason I wanted to write about it in the book is because it asks this question, which is, you know, very much at the core of a lot of cultural debate at the moment, which is, as a fan, are you responsible for the actions of the person who has created this music? And if they do behave in that way, are you obligated to boycott or stop listening to something that has given you a huge amount of pleasure over the years? And I take the Nick Cave line on this. So someone asked Nick Cave about this, about Morrissey. And Nick Cave's view was, once a song has been written and is out there and finds a listener, it is no longer the artist's, it belongs to the listener. So I think that's why if you want to listen to Pantera, if you choose to enjoy something which you've enjoyed for a long, long time, then you should continue to do so guilt-free, because for the simple reason there's a lot of things to feel shit about in life. And the music you listen to shouldn't be one of them if it's something that you cherish and means a lot to you. Now, whether then you then go and see Pantera in the light of everything that's happened, whether you're comfortable doing that, that's a more kind of knotty question. And you know, there's they pulled out of some German festivals because there was an academic over there kicking up fuss. I'm very interested in the fact that they haven't booked any UK shows. I don't know why that is. I think it might be to do with that. They haven't done any press around the reunion, so they're obviously conscious of the sensitivity around it, and they know it will blow up again if the opportunity comes around. And I think it just really
the political cycle.
So yeah, so you know, I think what is interesting.
I think it's interesting that you just said they know it will blow up again.
Do you think? Do you agree with that? Or
I think that there's a good possibility they see to it that it blows up again. Yeah. You just never know which way that wind's gonna blow, though, do you?
No. But what you can say from what I've seen from the footage is that, as we were saying earlier, I think Anselmo is singing exceptionally well now, and delivering good performances of those songs.
Well, Dan, one more thing on the kind of, touchy issue, the racist note, is the last video I saw was of someone who had brought, I believe, a Confederate flag to a Pantera show, and Phil was telling them that he disavows that.
Oh, what? So what, a recent show?
Yeah, very recently, a few days ago at the most. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, and literally he says, I disavow that. Don't make this shit political, goddamn. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So maybe that's set up to kind of deal with this this potential media crisis.
Yeah.
And then Morrissey came out from backstage and was eating a steak.
I just think it's ridiculous. If I can put it out there, I think you're all a bunch of pussies. Enjoy your music and leave other people alone.
Oh yeah, I think
I don't care how you like.
Yeah, if the music is good, you can ignore the artist behind it. I mean, people still listen to R. Kelly. They still listen to Michael Jackson because, people are able to separate the art from the artist. I fucking love the Smiths, and I don't give a flying fuck what Morrissey says in interviews because I'm not looking at his interviews. I'm listening to Strange Ways Here We Come.
Yeah.
And same thing with...
You have to be able to make that separation. No human is perfect. There's not one author that I agree 100% with. There's not one speaker that I agree 100% with. Hell, I love Dave Jarvis, and I don't even agree with him 100%.
Nobody should.
So we got to kind of put all the disagreements and biasness and personal perspectives aside to enjoy this process. Hell.
Of course. Have you heard Charlie Manson's album? It's fantastic. Now, what he did after the recording, that's a different story. But the music is still good. Oh, I'm alone on this one? All right, fine. Fuck y'all.
I think John Holmes was a fan.
It's funny. I was just watching some documentaries on the Woodstock 99, how that all went to shit. And it's funny that with Donington and with Ozfest, you never had shit like that, even though it was populated by people that you would expect exactly that from. What do you think it was? Do you think there was too many Oasis fans in that one?
I think that's more a question about the logistics. On the weekend, they were running out of bottled water and there were long queues for drinking water. I think if you put a lot of people in a place and it's incredibly hot and you don't give them water to drink, there's liable to be trouble. And I think a lot of the Woodstock 99 problems sprang out of the way that they treated the people who went there. Nothing to do with the actual people themselves. I've seen some pretty, I think, I've seen one of the documentaries. There's two documentaries. I watched one of them, and there was a sort of inference that the generation of guys who were at Woodstock 99 all turned into Trump supporters. And I just thought, this is a very oversimplistic interpret. There's a lot of people from a lot of backgrounds at those Woodstock 99 shows, and a lot of them will be very, straight up normal people now, just going about their lives. So it doesn't all have to turn into Donald Trump. It's like the law that every conversation online turns into a conversation about Hitler. I can't remember the name of that law. It's like the same now with Donald Trump. It's like every conversation has to turn into Donald Trump at some point. It could feel like that over here anyway.
Well, the thing is, in the United States of America, that political cycle is pretty important, at least to enough people.
Yeah.
It's
so
not so much here. I like to have a good time always, more than politicize.
Yeah.
So, is that why you only have a Twitter and not like a Facebook or Instagram, Dan?
No, I never got. I never got into Facebook. I just didn't like the surveillance factor.
There it is.
Of it.
Surveillance factor.
Yeah, because that's how I got a hold of Dan, is through Twitter. Because I've actually had a lot of success getting a hold, like having a correspondence with a lot of authors on Twitter. And actually just getting a hold of anybody that I actually admire is way easier on Twitter than ever on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or anything. And so that's actually how me and Dan started talking. So thank goodness for Twitter.
But people like Twitter. I think it's like a kind of the written medium, and it's a little bit. I was very addicted to Twitter at one point. I still am very addicted to Twitter. So yeah, I didn't go to Instagram. I'm not a huge fan of taking photos, and Facebook. I just thought I don't want people like friends stalking me all the time. So
you don't want to take pictures of your meals?
No.
Well, take pictures of the shows. That's what we do. We take pictures of the shows and stuff. Hey, real quick, let me interrupt the show on behalf of everybody here. We got Ville Girl in the chat saying, Leonard Skinner, my first concert in 1974. She was in 8th grade. Ville Girl, I'm certain you were a 70s hottie there at that Leonard Skinner show. Free bird as they get. All right, Flap Jackson enjoying the show. Just the Facts is in the chats, and Randy Roy from the band Raid is in the chat. So I want to make sure everybody in the chats are acknowledged and encourage everyone. I am engineering the show tonight, paying attention to the chats, so it's time to participate in the show, and I'll catch you over there and bring you up here on the screen. We'll talk about it.
Very good. Now, throughout this conversation, and also in the the podcast that you did with Too Old for This Pit, which you can see on Spotify, I think it was episode 6 with Dan Franklin. But you have a very nice voice. Is there an audiobook version of Heavy?
No.
Ooh. Should be.
No. No, I don't think they thought it was worth doing an audiobook.
Well, we're going to try to fan that flame until they decide, you know what, this is definitely worthy.
I've read the new one. So
it's funny. I was thinking about something like this earlier. How illegal would it be, or would it piss you off as an author, if we had our host here, Dave Jarvis, just sit here and read the book and then publish it on YouTube for everyone to listen to him read?
I mean, technically speaking, that would be a massive infringement of my copyright.
I knew that. I knew that before you even started talking, Ricky.
Well, that's why I phrased it that way.
Yeah. If he just self-published it, that would be one thing.
But as a consumer, I'm also a believer in, if people don't make things available, that gives everyone, like, why should rights holders withhold things from the people? So that's my 2 positions on that.
All right. Well, all the viewers at home, please message, what is it? White Rabbit Publishing. Is that correct?
Oh, no. Little Brown did Heavy.
Oh, okay. Talk to Little Brown and tell them, you know what? I like this guy's voice and I like this guy's book. Can we mesh the 2 together at all? Another revenue stream. We're trying to help you as much as you're helping us, brother.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, this is the age of the audiophile, isn't it?
True.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Well, thank you very much for talking about your previous book, Heavy. Now, a week from tomorrow, June the 22nd, your new book, Come My Fanatics, A Journey into the World of Electric Wizard, will be available for consumption. Tell us the process of making that book.
So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Electric Wizard. They're a doom metal band out of the county of Dorset in southern England. And after I wrote Heavy, that was a very broad book. I wanted to go deep into one story, and you know, Heavy was also about putting heavy music within kind of cultural landscape. And Electric Wizard are a very rich band. They are heavily influenced by H.P. Lovecraft, biker movies, weird European horror films, all the stuff that was written in weird tales, kind of lots of transgressive culture, occultism. And I've been a huge fan of theirs since I was about 14. So when it came to thinking about our next project, I was quite keen to tell a story of a band from beginning to end. But also, if I could write that as a kind of cultural biography of the band, I thought that would be interesting. And I was keen to sort of do a partnership collaboration book and see how that felt. So yeah, I wrote to their manager in late summer 2020, and we ended up sort of starting the process. We were, talking about it for a long time, and then started it about a couple of years ago, June 2021. And and I'm very pleased that it's coming out. Here's the hardback. It's not actually coming out in hardcover in the States until January. I think you might be able to get an ebook or and the audiobook from next Thursday, because I did record that.
All right.
And I would say about recording.
All right.
Dave was on to this.
Very good. Sorry, go ahead.
No. It's hard work recording an audiobook. That took it took 4 days. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for people who narrate books, because that's tough, but it's fun as well. Huge fun. But yeah, so you will be able to hear that, I think, stateside from next Thursday.
Now you touched on Electric Wizard in Heavy.
Yeah.
This is basically an expounding of that idea, or are they just like the most fascinating of all the subjects of that book that you were just like, you know what, it's undeniable how interesting their story is?
Yeah, it is that. They built a real mythology around what they do. Their behavior was also pretty extreme in the early days, so there's kind of lots of good rock and roll stories. They're prodigious drug takers and weed smokers, and they still go quite hard. And they create a kind of psychedelic universe using that, which is pretty unique within doom metal in particular, and English music. I think for me, I wanted to if I can take this, there's obviously the audience who like the band, and they always did particularly well in America. They did early tours in America at a level, but they built a big reputation in America, kind of like a reverse Oasis, actually. So I think if I can bring the band to a wide audience, especially here in England, it could be, I think they're just one of those bands that could be like an anvil where people go, just find there's just something so entertaining and fun. Fun's not quite the right word, but there's something very entertaining about what they do, which I think a lot of people might twig to.
For the folks that don't know, Come My Fanatics was actually an album by Electric Wizard, along with Dope Throne, which you definitely have some very glowing reviews for those albums. I need to hear those on some proper speakers, because I'm just not. Yeah, I'm listening to most of the stuff through my phone, and those speakers can only go so far. But I really need to get the immersive experience, the way that you speak so highly of them about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. So, and the other, you know, yeah, I mean, it was coming off of Heavy. It was good to go deep into a story with one band, and it's an, you know, for heavy music writing, it is an option to do that, to collaborate with bands. But it's, you know, you then, having done that, you then start to think, oh, I'd like to, you know, I should do something for my, you know, for myself next time. You kind of go between the two. But the pandemic was a big part of that, because I thought this is a great time to pitch a project like this, because there's lots of bands sitting around not able to do much. So it was a good moment to, and it's also their 30th anniversary this year. So it was a good moment to say, how about this?
Yeah,
But
what was that? What was that
like
pitch meeting
Heavy,
like? Like, how did you convince them to do a book about this? Well, you know, not really well known band.
well, yeah, I mean, I wrote a one-pager for their manager, who went down to see them, where they live in sort of remote corner of the southwest of England. And he put it to them, and they gave him the green light to explore it. And then we met in the town where the lead singer just grew up, Wimborne, and he sort of showed me around there. And you just sort of take, at every stage it could have gone away, the project, but you just sort of take it slowly. People who are very close to the band can't quite believe that the book came together. It's a bit of a minor miracle, all things considered, because of how enigmatic and secretive they are. But they're very larger than life. The thing is, you go and see them in their house. It's not like, you know, they open the door and they're in like a tracksuit, and it's like, oh, hey, how are you? You know, it's like they live in a witchcraft and wizardry museum. They really walk the walk.
Oh, I like them already.
Yeah, so yeah, it's, you know, I mean, the sound is extreme, and doom metal is not everyone's flavor. It is probably my favorite of the metal subgenres, which comes from enjoying getting stoned quite a lot in my youth. And I just love
Very
it.
nice, my friend. A friend indeed here we have on the program this evening.
And it is the subgenre of metal which is most directly derived from the Sabbath imprint as well, I think. So, and it's very organic, you know, Titanic blues-based music. So it really does it for me.
What is a really good Electric Wizard story that would entice us people from the States to be very interested in this project?
Well, when they when they came over from, I mean, it's not so much a story really, it's just quite interesting. When they first toured in 2001, did their first US tour, they played I think it was the Troubadour in the US, and at that show their reputation preceded them to the point where Anthony Kiedis from Red Hot Chili Peppers was there. Glenn Danzig was there. He was in the front row and kept leaving and coming back, which apparently was very off-putting for the band. Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age was there. The Queens of the Stone Age had just started, so they met him there. So they had this kind of really interesting, star-studded, like, American debut performance there. Which I think is just kind of interesting to see where the band was at in that period and the sort of attention they were bringing to themselves then. Like a good story, you know, just the singer and guitarist in the band, he used to do lots of other jobs around playing, and he was a carpet fitter. And doing carpet fitting one day, he managed to slice the tip of one of his fingers off, his fretting fingers off, his index finger, which had a weird echo of Tornado.
Oh, he did that on purpose.
Yeah, right. But
he had him some plastic tips ready to go.
Yeah, but that was the funny thing. So instead of the plastic tips, he just super glued the end of his finger back on.
See, even more.
Dang, that's metal as shit.
Metal.
Yeah. So that's the sort of stuff. Like, you know, the bass player Tim fell through the window of a church because he climbed up it trying to steal the cross, and ended up falling off and fell through a skylight and like ripped his, you know, arm open. And one time just got a
Sounds
visit
like
from
a
the
Texas boy.
No shit.
One time they went and got a visit from the police because this is in a previous band actually, because they'd gone and like robbed a gravestone, and to have on stage, they wanted a real gravestone to have on stage with this death metal band they were in. And the police knocked on the door and they sort of said, "Oh, it's over there." So it's quite low life, kind of growing up in a small town in rural England stories, but it's quite funny.
I'm into that. I dig that.
Sound very, very similar to our Dirty South rural stories.
Yeah.
Quite. And there's big parallels. And, you know, I think the scene around bands like I Hate God, there's a lot of connecting tissue.
Louisiana, New
world.
Orleans band.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty sweet. Now when they played the Troubadour, were they were touring on Dope Throne? I would assume, right?
Yeah.
Was that their first record, or had they like released demos or EPs up to that point that would have garnered the attention of Glenn Danzig?
Well, Come My Dope Throne. So I think the reason why all those people turned up was because the tour was partly organized by Greg Anderson, who was in Goatsnake back then and is now in Sun. So he's sort of friends with Josh Homme and a lot of the guys who circulated around the Rancho de la Luna studio back then, and they're kind of just well plugged into the LA music scene. So I think the word probably got out to say we're playing a gig with this crazy English band. I think you'd really enjoy it. Why don't you come down? It's like sort of a midweek gig. And I think they just sort of, the sound was extreme enough and the sort of tales of their antics were good enough that everyone was curious. But I think it was also just being friends with the Goatsnake guys who were supporting them that night kind of brought in. I don't know why Anthony Kiedis was there though. But that was obviously just after Red Hot Chili Peppers had presided over Woodstock '99 going up in flames. So
yeah, and they got none but blame.
Yeah, I say in the book, you know, Kiedis had just seen the hippie dream go up in flames, and then he came to watch Electric Wizard bury it. That's very much the vibe.
Nice.
Very interesting.
But let's not forget, in between all that, they made sure that Faith No More were eliminated from every festival that they played from '99 onward, because Anthony Kiedis is very easily butthurt.
Tell me about that. I'm not familiar with that.
Well, or not Faith No More, Mr. Bungle. Sorry. Within the same
Bungle.
week, within the same week, California by Mr. Bungle was released, and then Californication was released. And so they played a festival, and Anthony Kiedis had them thrown off just because they were releasing similar titled albums, and they were playing a festival close to the release of the albums. So there was just some kind of professional jealousy, whatever. So Mike Patton and Mr. Bungle get up on stage at, I want to say this is the Roxy, and it was a Halloween gig, and all of them went up there as the Chili Peppers, and they all like glued or taped syringes to their arms because we all know we know how the Chili Peppers got down. So anyway, that video got back to Anthony Kiedis, and he was like, you know, I'd let them play the rest of those festivals that they were scheduled with us, but after I saw that, I was like, nah. So they canceled them off of like 5 or 6 festivals within the next year, and then Mr. Bungle broke up for probably 15, 16 years and recently got back together. But yeah, that really, Anthony Kiedis put the kibosh on some Mr. Bungle back in the day.
Shit, so he's responsible for them getting kind of choked out as a band. That's Wow. I loved, and I still love Mr. Bungle's first album. I love that album.
Dude, a summer when the summer begins, Mr. Bungle's first album goes in my tape deck immediately. It's just such a great album.
That was one of the albums I bought, and I bought it at like a record shop, and it was the only time I've been like congratulated by the guy at the till. Was like, good choice, and I was sort of 15, you know.
Well done, kid. You done good.
Well done. You chose wisely.
Yeah, because like you hear pretty much every band that followed there, like within like a 15-second clip, because it was produced by John Zorn, who is one of the most outrageous fucking jazz musicians. He's the frontman for Naked City. It's a great underground New York punk jazz band. So they had him produce the album, and that's why it's just scattered, and there's just riffs and xylophones and snippets of television shows, shit that you would never be able to clear these days, but they were able to. And that's why the album is just so just frenetic and amazingly vital for anybody that cares about music.
I have to say, I liked the recent album, which I know was a kind of reworking of their original demo. But I've seen that they've started to do a little bit of that first album stuff again live. I'd love them to do more of that kind of stuff live again. I love the pure thrash stuff they're doing, but it's not kind of what interested me in them to start with. But I'd go and see them. Oh
yeah. Mike Patton, even to this day, is an amazing frontman. Who I think he's in his like mid-50s, I think, and he still climbs scaffolds and jumps into crowds, and but at the same time he'll also do stuff with the Bologna Symphony Orchestra in Italy and sing these 50s and 60s pop tunes with an entire symphony all in Italian, and it's just like, oh my god, you were just so amazing, bro.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry for not allowing any of the panel in on the fun. Do any of y'all have any questions for Mr. Dan Franklin?
I have a couple. I'm engineering at the moment.
Oh, do your thing, brother.
Yeah, I was trying to get this little song to show up. I just heard this song today, and I don't know what my computer's. It's kind of slow for a second right now.
Okay. All right. Just remember, if you're playing some Mr. Bungle, just know that they're part of Universal, and we had trouble with them earlier.
No, that was actually a Golden Robots Records band right there, and y'all were talking Mr. Bungle, and I was like, dude, I just heard this new band today, and I was like, wanting to share it. So, but I couldn't really get my YouTube to work. Because I remember when Mr. Bungle came out, that was right after the transition in our world where all guitar players started playing Slayer and all bass players were playing Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Right.
Yeah, because I think they had like three or four demos before they got their deal. And really, if Mike Patton hadn't been on Faith No More and had a hit, we would not know about Mr. Bungle.
Good point. Well, I actually would have. I definitely had some punk rock friends. Like Ministry had just come out recently before that. And, I've always been, I am the underground music person when I have my ear to the ground. And I did back then.
That is actually, you've mentioning Ministry. That is one of the omissions from the book. Was I didn't write about industrial metal much or at all, and I would like to write about that. I think.
Well, he quoted that George Bush, "The mind is a terrible thing to taste," is the record, and New World Order was sampled in there, and it was very angry music, and it was the first industrial like metal.
Yeah.
For us, it was right.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Ministry record the first?
What year was Terrible Thing to Taste?
Yeah,
I think that was I
80.
believe that was 89, I believe.
Yeah. Because the other from over here, the other industrial metal act was Godflesh. So their debut EP and Street Cleaner came out around the same time as Ministry. So it was quite a cool time because you had they're the two kind of big forces in that sound.
I feel like Kraftwerk was in there too, weren't they?
Yeah.
Kraftwerk from Germany, I believe.
Mm.
Yeah, like because I remember they interviewed Al Jorgensen and they were like, "So what do you think about industrial metal?" And he was like, "And don't ask me. You want to talk about real industrial metal? Check out Godflesh and check out Kraftwerk. They're like actual industrial. I'm some kind of weird alien."
And actually, Mike Patton wanted to get Justin Broderick from Godflesh into Faith No More at one point, I think. Just a little callback to the previous conversation.
Very good. We appreciate callbacks. You know what Electric Wizard means to you and to folks over there. I would have to say we have a similar relationship, or at least I do, with the band Snot.
Right.
Snot only released one album before their singer died, but that album blurs the line between punk and metal so beautifully that me and pretty much all of my friends have bought that album probably at least 7 or 8 times and wore the shit out of it because it's just such a phenomenal album. And honestly, when Nonpoint came through like in 2003 with Skin Dread fucking blew them out of the water. And really the only thing that saved Nonpoint, at least in Texas, was covering Snot. So, you know, they can have whatever new singer they've got and, you know, use whatever new musicians they've got. That first album, Get Some, is it should be hailed right up there with Masters of Reality.
Cool.
And their lead singer sounds like Sam Kinison, so you know.
Oh.
I was married for 2 fucking years. I know that you touched on this on the other podcast, but you know it's still an interesting story. You actually lost your wedding ring at a Deftones concert.
Yeah. And other stuff. I lost like some keys, and that was in relation to, because the theme of that podcast was that kind of the idea of when do you get too old to go in a mosh pit. And that Deftones concert was probably about 6 years ago now. So I was about 36. But yeah, it was embarrassing. My hands were just sweaty and it flew off. And I had to kind of, you know, and then the song stopped and it was kind of like, you know, when people do that, they lose stuff. They're like, get the fuck out of the way. And everyone gets out their phone lights. And like,
oh yeah,
anyway,
dude.
Some guy I found the ring, which was a miracle. And then some guy was holding up some keys going, are these yours? I was like, yes, those are my house keys. Thank you very much. I did lose another set of keys, but you know, it was fine. Yeah, and actually, when I went to Carcass, I kind of thought when I turned 40 last year, I was like, okay, I'm retired. I'm not moshing anymore because I just should stop. But then I went to see Carcass last week and I went completely nuts. So it's hard to retire when you're at a gig.
Y'all have some really nice mosh pits over there, man. God damn. Shit.
What kind of music did you grow up with locally, Dan?
Well, I grew up in London, so we'd obviously get all the touring bands, really.
Sure. Yeah.
From all over. So the first gig I ever went to was Meatloaf.
Awesome.
Yes.
At Wembley Arena. I love Meatloaf, and I was really upset when he died.
I'll do
because-
anything for love.
Dude, I just introduced my brother to Bat Out of Hell, and he was like, "Dude, by all accounts, I should not like this at all, but holy shit, this is a really good album." Like, I know.
Yeah.
Nobody does duets like the Meat.
No. So I went to see him on, it was Bat Out of Hell 2. I was about 11 and got taken by a friend's dad. I'm very grateful for him for doing that. But in terms of like local scene stuff.
Yeah, local music.
Yeah,
like what
music.
local clubs in London did you go see bands at, and what bands did you go see? That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah. So the local ones to me, there was the Kentish. I grew up in North London, so there was the Kentish Town Forum. So I saw Fear Factory there in 1996. That was like my first proper metal show. I also lived quite near Wembley Arena. I saw the Smashing Pumpkins on the Melancholy tour there.
Cool.
As I got a bit older, the sort of scene around Camden in North London. So there's where I went to see the Illegals. Actually, the Camden Underworld was a club that I went to quite a lot.
The Camden Underworld.
Yeah. Around that time in London, you had, I guess one of the more interesting bands that came out was 1 Minute Silence. They were kind of part of the new metal movement, sort of. They were definitely part of that. There was another band from Watford near London called Sixth, who were like that too. Would see those guys. So there was a lot of small kind of clubs in and around London. There was a nightclub called Feet First, which was all the teenagers who were into rock and metal would go to. But it's interesting because it's, growing up in a big city, it takes a few years to find your way into I found it took a few years to find my way into the more local scene where there were local bands who were playing. But I'm trying to think of any of them who might have really blown up big.
Oh, no. The more underground, the better. We have found that the less known the band is, usually the more interesting they are.
Yeah. There's one band. There's a couple that I saw in the sort of mid to late 2000s who I thought were really good local bands. There was a band called Jacano. This is quite a very obscure band. Jecano. They were really excellent every time I saw them. There was a band called Taint who were actually Welsh, but I think they were based in London for a while. Fantastic band.
Were you in a band?
I was at university, in Edinburgh. Just for a couple of years. It was fun. I played bass in that band.
Did you all record anything?
No, just a couple of demo tapes. And then the guy I was in that band with went and joined a band that we both liked called Gonga, who were definitely on that Sabbath sort of stoner rock vibe. They're really cool.
What about Solitude Eternus? Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah.
Are you a fan?
I love them.
Fan of Doom?
Yeah.
They're local. John Perez, all those guys. We used to watch them play at Joe's Garage here in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah. So Through the Darkest Hour was recorded in the same studio where Electric Wizard did their first album. And I think they recorded there because Solitude Eternus recorded there.
Here's one of your
he
bands.
Also joined, he also joined
Bring Me the Horizon here.
Didn't he?
Sorry, Dan, I'm kind of walking over here. I was playing some Bring Me the Horizon. I interviewed them like 10 years ago here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I ask you about the local scene and how you grew up, because here in Dallas Fort Worth, we have, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 good hard rock metal clubs, and then another 5 or 6 that are bigger venues that have, metal touring metal acts. But there's always a good 5 or 6 like rock metal clubs around Dallas Fort Worth. And then, everybody's in bands playing those clubs and going out and enjoying. And, that goes as far back to Pantera. When Pantera was playing, there was also another band around here that signed to Capitol Records named Rigor Mortis.
Oh, yeah.
So you could go see Rigor Mortis play and then go see Pantera play when nobody knew anything about them.
Cool. That must have been awesome.
Yeah. So that's the kind of scene that I'm always asking about and interested in around the world, I guess,
And then the guitarist for Rigor Mortis, Mike Scatia, ended up being part of Ministry. And then Bruce Corbett, the singer for Rigor Mortis, ended up being in War Beast. That was produced by Phil Anselmo.
And on House War Records.
Yeah, I saw War Beast support down about 12 years ago.
Really? They're in England, in London?
Yeah, the Roundhouse. Yeah.
Very nice. So did you enjoy War Beast?
I did, yeah. It was War Beast, Orange Goblin, and Down.
Well, that War Beast is like, that's Texas thrash is what we call that.
Yeah.
So if the world ever wondered what Texas thrash is, it's bands like War Beast and then also Watchtower, who has reformed to play a show in Europe somewhere.
But the best Texas thrash band of recent years is Power Trip.
That's what I was going to say.
Power Trip. Oh, beautiful, man. Good call.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Riley Gale.
Yeah, man. And also R.I.P. Bruce Corbett also.
And Mike Scotia and Dimebag and Vinnie Paul.
And Vinny, yeah, we got we got a growing cemetery over here.
It's rock and roll up in here.
I saw Power Trip over here at a pub venue, not a pub venue, but a kind of a venue attached to a pub, and they brought in a load of British hardcore bands to play with them.
Kick
and
ass.
I saw them play with Napalm Death as well, talking back to Napalm Death, and I just think Power Trip were the best thing to happen for a long time. And I was really upset when he died.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, totally.
And in that vein is that DRI also, so another killer Texas band.
Yeah, from Houston.
Enforced a Texan, aren't they? Do you know those guys?
Not familiar.
Who? Okay. You bringing up a band? Who is it?
Enforced. They're a Texas thrash band. Very good.
From what era?
Now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's what I like to hear.
All right.
And War Remains.
Looks like Dan has started another rabbit hole for me to climb down. Thank you, Dan.
Oh, sorry. I think they're from Richmond, Virginia. Sorry, I'm
Ultra Violence. They're on Century Media Records.
Yeah, Virginia, Texas, same thing.
Hey, it's all good.
Yeah, just teasing. No, there's a lot of great bands from Virginia.
You're not going to hear about the kick-ass bands here unless you are cued into a kick-ass, show podcast like Blow Your Brains Out. We have bands here like Creeper is a really good metal band that you really would enjoy, I think, based on the bands that you brought up here tonight. Iron Jaw, if you want something a little more classic metal but still unique, is a kick-ass local band. Rivet Head. You familiar with Rivet Head? They've been putting them out for a while.
Okay.
They're a Dallas band.
Cool.
Yeah. Every scene has so many great bands that just don't get radio play, but they make much better music than the bands that do get radio play.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you see this beautiful lady here. This is her band, Against All Odds. Ariel, she's the vocalist, and that other fella there on the screen, Josh, that's the drummer.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Got a band called Raid. They're pretty fucking heavy. You might like them. It's a single guitar. That's a live record. And I play these songs on the show, so you can hear the songs here on the show also. They're easy to find.
Okay, cool.
Dan, how do you find about local shows? Is it just through social media or?
Yeah. It's mainly social media these days. I was actually thinking back about how I used to find out about stuff in the past, you know, like in the listings at the back of Kerrang magazine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, social media drives a lot of the awareness of everything now.
Hey, bro, I used to get those Kerrang magazines. I used to subscribe to Kerrang magazine 20 years ago. Longer than that. Longer than that, honestly. Yeah. And I have known to pen pal once or twice from the Kerrang listings back in the day when I was, 18 or 19.
That's really interesting. Yeah, a friend of mine was doing a project where he got in touch with people who put pen pal requests in the back of those magazines to see what happened. Yeah, that's fun.
It was also a way of kind of telling people about music and asking them about the music they were listening to there locally in England or wherever they were from.
Yeah.
That's how we used to do it back then. I wasn't a big tape trader. You know, I didn't have the money to trade tapes and all that, but I had all the tapes and I had all the records, you know, as soon as they came out. And that was by just paying attention and communicating when you could. And that was one way you could do it. You know, you're communicating with headbangers if you're writing to someone, you know, in Kerrang magazine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just how we did it when we were wild, crazy kids. I also sent a letter to a magazine called the New Heavy Metal Review, which was, does that ring a bell?
No.
That's Brian Slagle, Metal Blade Records. Before he pressed his first record, Metal Massacre 1, he had a magazine that he printed at his dad's workplace off the Xerox machine. It was called New Heavy Metal Review. And so I wrote a letter. My brothers played in a band, and in that band were members of Rigor Mortis that signed to Capitol. But I sent a letter off, and he printed it. It was printed in the New Heavy Metal Review before there was a Metal Massacre 1. So that gives you an idea. I was actually that tuned in. I was getting all of the bands coming out of Metal Blade Records before they hit Metal Blade Records. I'll give you an example. One little trivia band is a band called it was Marty Friedman's band. They were called Vixen before there was a Vixen metal band, the all-girl metal band.
Yeah,
there was a band called Vixen with Marty Friedman on guitar and a female vocalist, though, and they were out of Hawaii. And I got that demo way back in '81 or something. And I fortunately had the pleasure of meeting Marty Friedman, and I sang him a couple of songs off of that demo, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. So
that's awesome. Well, Dan, I gotta say it's come to the end or near the end of our time with you. I just want you to know that it has been a pleasure and an honor spending this evening for us, early morning for you. One last question I have.
Sincerely.
Dan Franklin, how do you want to be remembered?
I don't know, as a good dad, to be honest.
Awesome. Hey, I'll take that.
Good dad, a loving husband, and a hell of a writer. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I can't speak on the first two, but I would assume just based on your character, You are probably that and then some. But on that third thing, you are most certainly a most excellent writer. And I thank you very much for letting me read your book, sir.
Oh, well, look, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been really fun talking to you guys. I'm delighted that you found Heavy, or Heavy found you, and that it's given you a lot of pleasure. And yeah, I'm chuffed, to use an English expression. I'm chuffed.
Well, thank you very much. I didn't realize that something I loved could be articulated with such grace and poise as the way that you presented with this book. And I'm very much looking forward to Come My Fanatics, A Journey into the World of Electric Wizard, due out June 22nd, I guess January in the States. But if Heavy was your first outing, then this can only be a step in the right direction, because you're an excellent writer, sir.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Ariel. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, really, thanks for staying up late with us, man. We appreciate it. And when your book comes out, you're welcome to come back on. We encourage you here all the time, Dan Franklin. If you're a friend of heavy metal, you're a friend of Blow Your Brains Out.
Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan Franklin, you want to hear some Dank real quick? Do you know who Dank is?
No.
Let me show you this real fast. We all have to work like you do, and so Dave is being respectful to you and your time. This right here is our host, Dave Jarvis' band called Dank. And what we're going to do here is give a shout out to all our drinking buddies as soon as I can find it. I don't know why my computer has been showing, but thank you, everyone. Blow Your Brains Out every Wednesday night right here, 9 p.m. Thank you, Dan Franklin, for joining us. Everybody go back, watch this interview. It's a classic. All right, all my drinking buddies, put them up. This is Dank.
Well, I was going good, drinking at the bar when my buddy ran into the back of a cop car. I find it kind of funny, man. I find
right. There's you some dank country from Texas. What do you think, Dan Franklin?
I loved it.
Well, we love you, and we love you loving your children, man. You've got to be an awesome dad. You're an awesome person. Thank you again for staying up with us late tonight. I'm going to play one more song. Anybody got anything to say before we end the show?
I just want to say I love all of you, and I hope you have a great rest of the night.
Love you guys. Y'all are awesome.
Yeah, every Wednesday night, blow your brains out, 9 p.m. till whenever. I always like to play the music that I have here, so I'm probably going to do an after party. If you want to join me as soon as this show ends, I'll play some more songs. But we're going to end right after this. This is the amazing Against All Odds featuring our very own Ariel and Josh Ing. Thank you very much for hanging out with us tonight, brother. This song is called Cold.
Drifting to sleep and just fade away. No one will know where you will go, your safest space. 'Cause hiding behind your cute little smile, the darkness it grows with each passing hour. Can't turn back the dial. I'm feeling so cold, not to the touch, falling so fast. Please don't you dare the grudge. 'Cause this fake little smile, it's getting too much for me to control. Oh, I've lost all control and I'm never enough. When gravity hits and all that remains are the stories untold and the secrets we take to our grave. 'Cause 6 feet below, with nowhere to go, the light becomes dark and dark is the light, so I'm told. I'm feeling so cold, not to the touch, falling so fast. Please don't you
All right, so that's it. I want to go through this concert calendar really fast. I forgot all about concert calendar, so forgive me for that. I did notice that Ariel was still here. Do you want to go through this with me?
Yeah, let's do it super fast.
Okay, super fast it is. We got some super sucker, free sucker.
Idle Job. How's my driving? Saturday, June 24th at Lola's in Fort Worth.
Freaking Lola's, man. You got your legit punk rock show at Lola's with free sucker. And this is the main reason I came back on, is to support the bands that support us, Yeah, Rivethead.
Gotta support. June 16th this week with Lone Star Caviar. Oh, that's an interesting name. Wide and Edge of Misery.
Lone Star Caviar.
Country River Club. Oh, I haven't been there yet.
Well, it's Tyler, so put that on your list. I've got a list of all the venues in Texas and Oklahoma that I have started. So I don't have it completed, but I've started it. I'm going to try to make a graphic of that list so that we can put it up here sometimes when we're talking about it.
Yeah.
To encourage bands to, to get out and play some shows. We talk about it here, so if I can help facilitate it by kind of, putting some of the pieces of the puzzle together for the DFW bands, and same thing for other Texas bands looking to play Dallas-Fort Worth, hit us up here. We'll send you in the right direction. All right, so who is this? This is
the Convalence.
It's because it's Tyrannical Deception. That's why I have it up here. That's correct. This Sunday, Tyrannical Deception. Our boys, that was a great interview, wasn't it?
Dude, they were awesome. Yeah.
All right, so there's that. And then we got a couple more Tyrannical Deceptions. They're coming up at Haltom. With Kill Everything.
MG Show.
I understand most Spanish, but I never got that dos on the end of that. It's the Auditory Annihilation dos. So that's who we're talking about, our boys. Tyrannical Deception. They are from this area, Fort Worth, and some have moved to Oklahoma, just on the other side of the Red River. And this is a show they're going to be doing in Arkansas.
BFE Rock Club. Yep.
I believe that's Arkansas. So that's on the list there. So everybody paying attention. There's a place. Here's the one in Arkansas. Cord, Arkansas.
Shaka Cord. June 23rd and 24th.
Yep. So that's Tyrannical Deception. From there, you know what? Most of these are going to be just all older flyers, so I'm going to go through them really fast. This is the show I'm really excited about.
That one's coming up.
June 24th. We still got a couple of more weeks. As a matter of fact, this band right here, after we end the show, anybody who wants to after party, I'm going to after party exclusively on YouTube. I'm not going to take the time to go do all the different like right now, we're going out to Twitter and Twitch and 3 different Facebook pages. I'm just shooting it out everywhere I can, right? So I'm going to after party and play all these badass songs, and I've got a couple of Warhog songs for everybody, and that'll be coming up right after this.
Aska and the Argonaut in July at Growl. Coming back at you.
And the Deep. And the Deep. So
I have to say that with a growl, like the Deep.
Yeah, the Growl, the Deep.
I think I have a low voice. I don't.
Saturday, June 22nd, 2023. Oscar. The Deep.
That name's just fun to say.
Oscar. Which one?
Aska.
Growl. Yeah, Aska. That's George Call. When I used to work at Pipe Dream Records in Arlington, Texas, at one time, Ariel, I was managing Pipe Dream Records. I was DJing on KNON, and I printed a magazine called The Skull Press.
Oh, that's dope.
And yeah, these guys came in from Ohio, I believe. If Dan's still in the facts, man, he can give me the facts on this. But yeah, man, it was they came in like rock stars, came into town going, "We're going to be the next Man-O-War."
I love it.
So here we are, all these years later, Asuka tearing up the growl with the Argonaut and the Deep. I love it. All right, I'm going to skip over these because I don't even know if any of those are legitimate. As a matter of fact, I'm done. Ariel,
All
thank you once
right.
again. Everybody blow your brains out. 9 p.m. right here. We're going to give a shout on our way out to Dan Franklin.
That was a great interview.
I thought it was. Yeah. I'd have liked to have had more time. That's kind of how I always feel every show. Well, really, you know, I'd like to have talked to him about the scene over there now. You know, what's the club scene like there in London compared to the scene here in Dallas-Fort Worth?
Oh, yeah.
You would think that they'd have a comparable scene there in London.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they have something that's mirrored.
And it's not every day that you get to just like talk in real time to someone in London about, you know, who actually likes music and is out checking out the scene and everything.
Yeah. Very big.
All right,
passion.
everybody. What's that, Ariel?
He has a very big passion for it.
Looks like it, but not just European bands. This Electric Wizard, they're from here, right? Aren't they from California or something? I know.
didn't catch that. I think I was away for a little bit of part of that interview, so you could be
Well,
right.
there's another thing I would like to talk to him about, and that's Solitude Eternus, because you can't really have a doom metal conversation without Solitude Eternus. And if for no other reason, that singer Robert, he ended up becoming the singer for Candlemass. And Candlemass is like at the epitome. They're the masters of this doom metal world. And so, Solitude Eternus is right there. So I'd like to have talked to him about that a little bit more. Hey, Josh, what'd you think? You still there?
Yeah, I thought it was a good, pretty good interview. But I was kind of holding my breath on the Phil Anselmo greatest frontman of all time, because
Yeah,
you know I got opinions too. But no, I mean I think he's definitely good, you know. But you know I'm biased.
I think he was talking about like frontman, Josh.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Just his stage presence alone, how he kind of commanded the stage, you know. And I think he did, you know, for a lot of people, you know, he certainly did here. Let me tell you that when I was just a kid.
When I was a wee lad.
Look at him in the picture right there, all smugged, you know. I'm telling you, he was cool. You know, he wasn't an asshole to me. You know, we had our run-ins a couple of times, but you know, you just could tell. You know, everybody knew when he showed up that he was what Pantera was missing. You know, because we had all loved Pantera for years already. Really wanted to see the best for them, and this guy showed up day one, kind of. You know.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, you know, sounded 1,000 times better with him. That's for sure.
I agree. Now, so that's why I asked about, well, who was the other reigning frontman? Because to me, that person, for a little while at least, was David Lee Roth. In my era of like late 70s, 80s metal music, I saw them all. You know, Judas Priest, Slayer, you know, all of them. And, you know, for a while at least, David Lee Roth was untouchable. So, I don't know. What do you mean by front man? I think it's like he did use the words that the way he commands the audience and all, you know. All right, so how about this, Josh? Who else is there? Is it the man behind the guitar? Is it James Hetfield that commands the audience? Hey, you're on mute.
His audio went out. Yeah.
You're on mute, Josh. So is it James Hetfield? I did
Oh
not.
no,
mute
his
you for the
audio
record.
went out.
Yeah, you're there. You are. Hear you now.
Oh, that's weird. I had a mic on. Yeah, I mean, James is my favorite, but you know, everybody's different strokes for different folks.
Dude, James Hetfield definitely knows how to command an audience.
Well, I'm out, boys. Till next time.
All right, thank you both.
Peace.
See y'all next Wednesday. Everybody, every Wednesday night, 9 p.m., blow your brains out. Here we go. Oh, join me for an after party. If y'all want to hear some music, we're going to listen to some Warhog and all that good stuff.